Thank you guys so much for participating in this year's Gimme Shelter. My name is Ann Shutt. I'm one of the board members as well as one of the Gimme Shelter committee members. I work downtown just next door to New Hope. I'm an advisor with the Waite Financial Group, and this will be my 4th year participating in Gimme Shelter. Last 3 were in a box. Who are my box people tonight? Nice, good job. And then the rest of you in cars? What do you think about a nice feature we added this year, right? Some car options? All right. So you guys, this year is more important than probably any year, just with everything going on with the pandemic. We estimate that there could be a potential increase once the moratorium on evictions is up here in the next week or 2. There could be up to a 40% increase in homelessness. So it's already been an issue. We've already struggled because of lack of affordable housing, but now we feel that it's going to be even more of an issue. So we're so grateful for all of your participation. We've had half as many participants this year. We've had half as many participants sign up this year, so you guys are the troopers, but I just am excited to say that we've already raised more money this year than we did last year with half as many participants. So thank you so much. We also have people that are not here that are participating, and they're participating from home. So when you registered, if you didn't see that, we have quite a few people that are going to be joining us via Zoom and are participating at home. So I know we've got Logan in Dunlap, who's building a shelter on his front step. Dan and his daughter are camping out in a tent with a campfire in the backyard. I'm not sure. I know Heather and her husband Darren are out at their house as well. And then there's quite a few others at home. So we just want to thank them for participating. They didn't feel comfortable coming downtown and participating, so they're going to just support us from home. So tonight I have the pleasure to introduce our first group of presenters, which is our panel discussion. You've already met Jennifer Dawson, so she's going to be the moderator, but I also want to just introduce the rest of the team here. So this is the outreach team, and you'll learn lots about what they do. It's critical to keeping things going with our organization. We have our operations direction, Molly Pilgreen. We have Darce Eberle, who's our outreach specialist, and Shendante Lewis, who is our community support counselor. So let's give it up for Jennifer and the outreach team panel.
Thank you so much, Ann. Before we get started, I think you can see some of the stats behind me. And I am going to read them just for the benefit. I think our folks online can see those, but 255 people experiencing homelessness were identified by a point-in-time count last year, and that's here in this area. 663 is the number of homeless children enrolled in schools in Peoria, Tazewell, and Woodford and Fulton counties during the current school year. 663. Just, I mean, let that number sink in for a second, right? I don't even think I know 663 people, let alone imagining that many kids that don't have a regular home. Can you go to the next slide, please? 80%. This is the reason why this team is here. 80% of the unsheltered people engaged by this outreach team are able to secure housing. 80%, rock stars. Phoenix CDS outreach program housed 241 people last year. 241. Over 19,000 meals were distributed, and 97% of those housed stay housed. They do not return to homelessness. And that is the purpose behind this organization and what they do. But the reason we're here tonight, really, as I mentioned earlier, is to kind of peek behind the curtain and see what our outreach team does on a daily basis. So I'm going to read a little bit about them, and then we'll dive into some questions. So Phoenix CDS has the only homeless outreach program in the area focused on helping those experiencing homelessness secure a permanent house or home that they need to end their homelessness and reach their full potential. Speak up. Speak up for out there. Got it. I need a podium. Can I stand up? Because I'm kind of more of a stander. The Phoenix CDS outreach team reaches out to those experiencing homelessness on the streets and at other points of access, like shelters and meal programs. The short-term goal of the program is to help improve the quality of life with basic needs. So we're talking food, water, sanitizer, clothing for the weather. But the long-term goal is to really build a relationship with each individual or family and identify and address the barriers to housing that they face. Ultimately, our goal is to help them secure the housing that they need to end their homelessness permanently. So, I gave you some stats there, and I think they're huge. Like the 80% of unsheltered folks are able to secure housing. 97% of those housed never return to homelessness. So Molly, Darcy, and Shendante, I'm going to take a seat and I'm going to let them share a little bit. And this is really more of a conversation. And it's really just to reveal kind of what it's like as an outreach coordinator, but also to help us maybe understand more about what life would be like on the streets if you don't have a permanent home. So how long have you guys been part of the CDS outreach team? Let's start with that.
I've been with the organization for 4.5 years. I was the Outreach and Rapid Rehousing Program Manager and just recently stepped into the Director of Operations role.
Awesome. Darcy.
I've been with the team for 2.5 years.
Okay. We have the cheap seats in the back. Can you scream that out?
So sorry about that. I've been with the team for 2.5 years.
2.5. Okay.
I've been with the agency over 3 years, but I did outreach for a little over 2 years.
Now, I don't know about y'all, but 4, 2, 3, did I get that right? I don't think I was that effective looking at those numbers that young in my career. So I think it's fantastic. And I'm going to keep bragging on you guys. Can you give us a glimpse into maybe a typical day for somebody who is without a permanent home? What does it look like?
I think a lot of their day is spent looking for resources. So, when you don't have a place to lay your head, you don't have somewhere to shower, you're trying to find where your next meal is going to come from, where are you going to sleep that night, bus passes, transportation. Your day's kind of consumed with looking for the resources that you need. And really anyone that we talk to will tell you that it's just trying to survive the day. That's really the focus for someone.
Okay. You mentioned trying to figure out where the resources are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe walk us through a little bit about what else does that mean? So like I get up in the morning, I go get breakfast, I get ready, I shower, I go to work. Take us through that. A little bit more detail, maybe.
Sure. You guys can chime in if you'd like. When they wake up, you can drive downtown and you see people sometimes sleeping on the benches. So imagine that you're waking up and it's super cold out and you've got that little layer of frost on your sleeping bag and you get out of it and you're trying to, get that all put together in your backpack because that's all you have is one backpack. You get it all stuffed in so no one steals it. Put it on your back, and then your first stop is usually like a soup pantry, food pantry, somewhere where you can get your first meal of the day. Once you get that taken care of, then you're trying to figure out what you're going to do the rest of the day. So some folks will encounter us on the streets. Some folks will be going to maybe pick up a meal for later in the day. They might be going to the link office to get that taken care of. Maybe they have a doctor's appointment. Really just trying to find whatever they need for that day to get through. And they're doing all this walking and, feet issues, trouble with their shoes. It's a pretty strenuous process for someone who's homeless.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of getting the picture, right? It's not like you can just get up and walk away because you have to take everything with you, right? Or figure out someplace to secure it. So like you said, nobody would take it.
Yeah.
You're pretty much carrying your life on your back.
Yeah.
Wherever you go. If you've made it all the way down to, say, Sophia's kitchen for lunch, your life is still on your back.
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
You don't get to put it down.
No.
Yeah. Tell us maybe what it's like for you as a member of the outreach team. What does your day look like? What are your roles? How are you interacting with individuals?
We do get asked this question quite a bit. And the honest answer is there is not a typical day.
Okay.
Ever. It's always changing.
Yeah.
You know, we get into the office at 8 o'clock and very first thing you're going to do is you're going to check your voicemail and check your email. Because depending on what is on there and who
Right.
has contacted you, that pretty much determines your day. You know, I joke frequently that my calendar is a suggestion.
Okay.
We're always running late and we're always apologizing for being late, no matter how well we plan. And from there, you might have a quieter day where maybe you're just going to be a few hours in a shelter, talking to people, figuring out what they need, doing intakes, that sort of thing. You may have 3 people that need to go to the doctor at different times. And, you know, you're scheduling with other team members and do we have a car available and how many can I take at a certain time? And do they all have doctor's appointments in the same area? Because you could have somebody way on the south end and you could have somebody up here. You know, there's times that you will drop them at the doctor and say, okay, I have to run somebody else and I will be back. Don't leave. And they do, they wait for us.
So, I mean, this is something that I never really expected to hear that you guys are doing, is taking people to doctor's appointments. Honestly, I mean, I guess I have preconceived notions, right? Walk up to somebody and say, do you need a place to stay? And I'm sure, does everybody go, oh, me, I will take a place to stay. It's just not that simple of an exchange, right?
It's not that simple. And of course, our people who are on the streets, the first thing that we want to do is try to get them into a shelter.
Okay.
Some people have reservations with that, and you may meet with them every couple days for a few weeks before they're brave enough or trust us enough, or however you want to look at it, to say, yes, I'll get in the car and go with you now.
Okay.
You know, and then that's the most immediate need. Try to get some sort of roof over their head.
Okay.
Beyond that, do they have an ID? If they don't, let's try to get them to the DMV so they can get an ID. Everybody, you've either lost most of your belongings and or they've been stolen while you're out on the street. A lot of our people don't have an ID. They don't have a social security card. They don't have a birth certificate. They literally have nothing. So we're starting from scratch. You know, you can't go to a food pantry without an ID. An ID is one of our biggest requests.
So that's one of the biggest barriers then to getting people the help that they need,
Yes.
in whatever fashion that is.
Yes. If you can't prove who you are, you can't get the resources that you need.
Okay. Can you?
Question,
Yes.
you help them get the IDs?
Yes. Yes, we have a certification that any of us on the team can write up certifying their homelessness. We have a notary on the admin staff who will notarize it. And some will take that piece of paper and go to the DMV themselves. And some we put in the car and we go. And we sit with them until they have it.
Are we good to just ask them questions?
Jump in.
Okay, I've got a
Okay.
question. Welcome. So talking about ID specifically, I think if you think about unsheltered homeless individuals being one of the most victimized groups of people in our community, how do you handle, suppose I leave my purse sitting on the sidewalk. Do you think it's going to be there in 24 hours? It's not. And so what often happens is individuals come to us multiple times for the exact same thing because their things are being stolen all the time. So how do you deal with the frustration that comes along with an individual that for the 3rd time that week says, I lost my cell phone and I lost my ID? But it's like, how do you cope with that? Like, just personally, I'm curious, because to me, that's really part of it, is being able to just say, this is not things that are.
It's not about me and my frustration.
And we've done this 3 times. It was hard the first time, it was really hard the second time, and now we're doing it again in a really short period of time.
I usually just kind of joke with my clients. Really? We're going to do this again? All right, come on, let's go. there's no other way to handle it. This is their life and we're here to help them. And so that's what we're gonna do. If it's 3, 4, 10 times, it's just what we do.
And
Yeah.
you get a little smarter each time too. So if you save copies
Yeah.
of some of the documents in their file, then next time you have to go, you've got more of what you need. So it's less of a process sometimes.
Oh, you have an original birth certificate?
We'll
Let me
hold
keep
on
that
to
in
that,
your
yeah.
file for you.
Safekeeping, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're really sort of ambassadors, right? And you function a little bit on their behalf, it sounds like.
A lot
Right.
of advocacy.
Yeah,
A lot.
okay. That's the better word. What is a good day? What does a good day look like? Like, you know, some of us get home from work and you're like, I slayed the day. I got it. What is slaying the day for you?
Getting someone off the streets.
Yeah, someone that we've been working with long periods of time. They have a lot of barriers. They didn't expect to be going into housing, getting those people into housing and getting them the items that they need to start their new future is the best days.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's top,
Mhm.
right? What are some of the other little wins that you've had? Do you have any kind of personal favorite stories that, you know, I don't know, like I mentioned earlier, right? It's not like people are knocking on your door looking for help, which is surprising to me, right? You would think that people would be reaching out to you, but actually you are the ones reaching out to them. So what are some of those other wins look like?
I think we were talking about this earlier. It's easy sometimes for us to get bogged down in the challenges and the struggles of the days, but when you kind of take a step back and look at some of those successes, it's really amazing. One that sticks out to me personally, so I've been with the organization 4.5 years, and when I very first started, there was a fella who always slept downtown. And we would try to talk to him. I would go up to him at Sophia's kitchen. Hey, how's it going? You know, you want to talk? How are things? What can I do for you? And he would kind of just grunt at me like, yeah, whatever. And I was like, all right, that's cool. Next time I was there, I'd say, hey, how's it going? And eventually he started smiling at me and he was a little less grumpy, and that was cool. And so we did this for a couple of years, and he
2
would soften
years.
a little bit, but yeah, he was okay where he was. He wasn't really ready to accept me into his life and to take what I could offer. And that was fine. I was just going to keep trying because that's just what I do. And so last fall, kind of, you know, as we'd been in the pandemic for a little bit, we were talking to him one day and we were like, hey, what do you think about getting housed? And he was like, I'll stay in housing till March. And then, you know, like I'll go back to the street, because he, you know, his street life was all he had known. So it sounded appealing for the winter. But then when that was passed, he thought he would go back out. So as time progressed, we finally found him a unit. He has some physical disabilities, so it took us a little bit to find one that he could actually get into. It can be challenging for folks because there's not a lot of elevators and things in apartments around here. So Darcy found him a unit. We were all super excited. We were like, yes, this is going to be it. And we kept going out to him. We were like, hey, we got a unit. Are you ready for this? He's like, yeah, let's go look at it. So Darcy took him to look at it, and he was like, all right, this is fine. This will work. Okay. So we kept telling him like, hey, your lease up's going to be this Friday. Hey, it's going to be this Friday. And every day we take him a meal, and he'd be like, is it this Friday yet? He's like, yeah, it's going to be this. And he talks like that. So that's, yeah. And so we'd be like, yeah, we're still on for Friday. Yeah, we're on for Friday. So we showed up Friday. Darcy went, picked him up on the street, and he was like, you actually showed up? Are we still doing this? And she was like, well, that's why I'm here, silly. Like, we've been saying, yeah, we're doing this. And he did not believe us until that day when we showed up, because they're let down so often. And they're just used to that. And so she gets there and he's like, well, I packed my stuff just in case. So he got his stuff together and he got in the car with her, and he's like, well, but my friend, she's got to come. And Darcy's like, come on, get in the car, let's go. So they all tag teamed it up there, and we had a bed and a mattress and pots and pans and dishes and blankets and sheets and cleaning supplies. And she got him all moved in, and his friend helped him set up his bed. And it's amazing because he had been homeless for 20 years. So not just for as long as I'd worked there, but he'd been homeless for 20 years, living
Wow.
on the street, literally
At
on the
least
streets.
20 years.
And we had all
We've all
tried
worked-
to-
We've all tried, and
It took-
he told us, he said, I stopped counting at 20 years. We may be closer to 25 or 30, actually.
Holy cow.
And
Wow.
yeah, I pulled up and he was sitting on the sidewalk. I said, "You ready to go?" He just kind of looked at me and he goes, "I didn't think this would happen." And I said, "Well, it is, let's go." And he said, "Well, I packed." You know,
Just in case.
just in case, and packing means we had about 6 garbage bags of his belongings and
Mhm.
load them up in the car. And even after all of the work that we all put into that, one of the barriers was we couldn't get Ameren on in his name.
Why?
How do you prove somebody is a person that has no credit score, that has never had a bank account, never had a credit card, never had a utility in their name? Of course, has lost the birth certificate, has lost the current ID, but we did have a copy of an old one. And it took a little bit, and I took everything I could get my hands on. The church here in town had helped him, and they emailed me records, and I printed off anything I could find, even his jail record, had our notary stamp it.
Mhm.
And I started faxing things to Ameren just over and over and over. And then I had them on the phone. And honestly, I think they just gave up to get rid of me.
We all do that with Darcy. It's
It
fine.
was like, this woman is not going to stop calling us if we don't give this man power. And so they said, well, we're going to make a one-time exception and we'll have his power on. The work order just went out. And so I called him and I said, "Shorty, it's gonna be on, and he said, "I know, came on 2 minutes ago." And he's a model resident. His landlord loves him. Everything is great.
And how long has he been in housing?
Middle of October.
Middle of October.
And he does not plan to leave in March.
And he intends to stay.
And he intends to stay.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that's the best. That one gives me chills. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Obviously Ameren is a monster institution in this area.
Yes.
From what you just said, it doesn't sound like they have very much awareness of the responsibility that they have to help you get these people what they need. It sounds like them and maybe the water company and stuff, sounds like their mindset is not in the right place where it needs to be to help the residents of this town. What is your feeling on that? Were you like the first person that they encountered that, you had to keep hammering and hammering and hammering? It sounds like the issue might be with them more so than any resident, lack of documentation.
I understand their point of view. They need to know that this person is who they say they are because, for Ameren, they also get a lot of people that hook up utilities in somebody else's name. They run up a $3,000 bill. I do see their side of it. But I was relentless and I said, I can't get this man an ID. The DMV is closed and I can't get a social security card because I can't get an ID. And, there's multiple people that have worked with him and we do have an ID. It's just expired. And finally they said, well, we understand. And when you can get these documents, just send them over.
The other thing I'll say is a lot of folks come to us with Ameren arrears in the thousands because family or friends or identity theft, people have used their information and gotten the account. So from their side of it, I appreciate that they are very careful with it because we have to find a way to pay those off for folks. And so that in itself becomes a barrier. So it's a double-edged sword. And I get it from both sides. We're just lucky that Darcy is lovingly referred to as the pit bull and gets business taken care of. So
it's okay. I own that nickname. It's fine. I kind of enjoy it.
Small but mighty. We talked a little bit about trust, but maybe expound on that a little bit more? Can you tell us why it takes people time to build trust with you? How long does that, I mean, this one example is 2 years, right?
4 years.
4 years.
Mhm.
And why?
We see that a lot. He's not the only person by any means. And when you think about a system that has so many walls up for folks and barriers, and people let them down, and it's not always any fault of anyone's. You know, agencies have turnover, workers change, one person doesn't know what the former person was doing. And so they're just used to a system failing.
So it's
them.
layers upon layers
Absolutely.
upon layers of barriers, at which point
And not
people
just with
just go,
Agencies like their family or their
Mhm.
friends, like they've been let down by everyone. And so they don't want to believe that we're going to be the ones to help them.
you're not going to be any different.
Yeah.
Because history has told them that.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. I do want to pause. Do we have any questions online?
We do not right now.
Okay, just holler, flag me down if we do.
You might want to tell people that are online that they can put questions in the chat. I don't think
Yes.
you mentioned that.
I don't think I did, but for those of us joining online, there is a chat feature. So just type your question in there. We do have somebody monitoring that, and we'd be glad to entertain your questions. We do have one in the room. Go ahead.
Expounding on the trust issue and the apprehension that the clients have, is there anything we can do as this community now, who's obviously all willing to step up and help somehow? Is there anything we can do when we come in contact with people like that to, I mean, because that's kind of what I anticipated the answer was going to be to your question initially, was it's repetitive history that they've been let down. Is there anything we can do of people now who want to be involved more? And I mean, what can we do to make them trust easier, better?
Treat them like you would any other person you come in contact with. We're all human beings. We all deserve respect. You know, the other thing is, because they do have reservations, not only with us, but with everybody, you know, don't come on too strong. You know, talk to them. If your first encounter is just, hey, how's it going? You know, is there anything you need? Okay, let me know. Just keep coming back slowly. Let them direct you where they need to go, because eventually they will. They will see that you're not, quote unquote, up in their face trying to tell them, well, you need this and you need that, and this is what you should do. Let them decide, and then just be the guide along next to them.
You know, one of the things that, as you're asking that question, because I asked them the same questions actually on my list here. Thank you for stealing my thunder.
You're welcome. That's right, we'll get back to the AEDs then.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is the victimization. And I don't know if that's a word that you guys use much of, but to me, it seems like they have been a bit victimized, perhaps at times. And then, you know, my desire to help somebody shouldn't be pushed on somebody. And I think that's sort of the turning point. Like, well, because I'm offering, you need to take my help, right? And I think that's kind of not maybe the way to look at it. It's more like, let's, like you said, treat people with respect, like a person that gets a choice. Even though the choice may be obvious to us, maybe it's not for them. And I think that's kind of what has turned maybe in my mind. Did you have a question?
I do. So on the flip side of that, right? How do you start the conversation where those of us on this side are able to be trusting enough to reach out, to be able to help, right? Because there are certain mindsets of people who think that the reason why there's homelessness, or the reason why someone is homeless, because obviously they've done something so bad or so wretched that has gotten them to this point. So then where is that common ground where, you know, they can learn to trust us and we can also learn to trust them as well? So that way it's like a mutual, you know, exchange.
One thing, and Darcy and I talked about this a little bit earlier, and it's sort of applicable, you know, when we go to the mall, I don't know anyone around me, you know, and I still might say hi and I don't worry. Or we go out to eat and we do all of these things and we see people that we just consider the normal everyday citizens, right? And we don't necessarily think of those things. You see someone standing on the street and you automatically have a us and them perspective. And so we're just recognizing that they're no different than anyone else just because of where they're standing or what they're asking or the sign that they're holding. They're no different. And that's hard sometimes to remember, but it's very important to remember. The other thing that we always say, you know, we hear a lot about, you know, oh, the homeless are criminals or they're dangerous or violent. And we always, you know, we feel more comfortable with our clients 99% of the time than I do just walking around in the general public because I know them. They watch out for us. We have a bond. They trust us. We trust them. And so if you just are able to take that time to open your eyes and consider them just as equal as everyone else, you could have that same relationship and you could feel that same level of comfort. And it's hard to do. We don't want to do things that aren't comfortable for us. We're inclined to try to avoid that. But consider it a challenge of trying to break out of your shell and do something that feels different and just ease into it. You know, they don't want you to run up on them and yell in their face any more than you would want someone to do that to you, right? So just ease yourself into it and take a chance. And, you know, you can have similar relationships than we do.
Yeah, and just remember that it could be you on that side, you know, doesn't mean it could be your aunt, your uncle, it could be anybody in your family as well. Just because they're living that situation doesn't mean, you know, it could not be you for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add to that, because I think those answers are excellent, and remembering that that could be you. We've all been possibly really close to that at some point in our lives, right? But one of the things also that I think that we underestimate and sometimes discount, and sometimes people come to my door, they're having a problem. They're having a problem if they're coming and asking for something in our building. And so sometimes the best thing to start building trust isn't to dive into whatever problem they're having or why they're homeless. The first thing I do is go, bro, take a breath. You want a cup of coffee? Like I want to treat everybody the way I want to be treated. And I'm saying if you're coming to me before 11 a.m., we're going to sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about the weather, and we're going to talk about the cargo, and we're going to talk about the bears. Because I think part of it is just, I've heard so many times around, you guys have heard a lot and shared these stories about individuals just feeling absolutely invisible. They're just invisible. And so sometimes just having a freaking conversation about the world, you will be surprised what an interesting and conversation that you can have with individuals if you just approach it like you're talking to one of your friends and just sit down and have a cup of coffee. You need a snack, bro? You want some cream? Like sometimes it just starts there, right? Just things that we do every day and then we take for granted.
That's an excellent point, because I know this comes up every time we have this discussion, and I brought it up again with our panel, and I apologize because I feel like a broken record, but I think driving around Peoria, I have seen more people out in the last 12 months, probably because of COVID, right? Job loss. There are a lot of people out holding a sign at just about every intersection. And I don't know what to do with that. And give me your answer, because it was so good. What do we do in those situations? And I was telling Molly, I said, you know, part of me wants to give them cash if I've got some cash. But then I know there's a lot of people that feel like, well, if I give them cash, they're going to use it for drugs or alcohol. Tell me what you said.
Well, I said, Jennifer, it's not your business, in a nicer way, though. I mean, no one tells us what to do with our money, right? And so when I give to someone, I'm giving out of the goodness of my heart, and I'm not doing it with strings attached, and I'm not doing it and then telling you what you need to do with it. That's not my business. I've reached out, I've given the gift. What they choose to do with that is their decision, and that's their choice, and we respect that.
And Darcy? Because this is something I didn't think of.
My answer was a little bit more controversial. So yes, there are plenty of panhandlers that they really are. They're going to take your couple dollars and they are going to go buy whatever their substance of choice is. And that's just the reality of it. the part that we don't think of is when someone is this far down the rabbit hole in addiction, they need that substance to live.
Literally.
They need it to get through to the next day. So if that's what they need to stay alive one more night so that we can continue to engage with them, I'm okay with that. You know, you have to think about it. How do you ask somebody to go through detox who doesn't have a warm bed to shiver in, who doesn't have a toilet to throw up in? That in and of itself is a terrifying thought to them, you know, and that's why we meet everybody where they're at. I always tell people, you know, I don't care what your substance is, just let me know and we'll move on. And they always look at me like they don't believe me. You know, I open every interview that I do with, I just want you to know everything here is free and confidential. And they'll look at me and they'll say, but what do I really have to do? Nothing. Keep meeting with me, keep talking to me. That's all I ask.
Let's talk through those hoops. What hoops are they referring to? What else do I have to do to get help? What are the conditions?
Do they have to go to rehab? Do they have to be clean? Do they have to take drug tests? All those things they think we're going to make them do to get into housing.
Do they have to have a job?
Do they have to have a job? Do they have some type of income?
Do they have to take classes? Do they have to go to certain church services?
Okay.
What are we asking of them? And I will tell them many, many times, nothing. I swear there's no strings attached to this. You know, what church you worship at, dude, that's your business. You can tell me, don't tell me. That's fine. You know, and I always tell them, I will never make a decision for you, ever. I might, if you ask me, I will give you my thoughts, but I am here to just help you find what you need to live the life you want. Not what I think you should live, but what they want to live.
I think that's huge. And I think that's probably what sets Phoenix CDS apart here in the community, is the ability to treat people just as they are, as an individual, wrap them with the services that they need, and hopefully they will adopt, right? With time, with trust, and not as a mandate.
And it's really hard to address any of those things without a house. I mean, Darcy just said you don't have a bed, you can't detox. I mean, that's painful. But how can you do anything if you don't know where you're going to sleep that night? You know, it's a model called Housing First that Phoenix follows. And the idea behind Housing First is that there are no preconditions to service. There are no requirements or things that they have to go through before we will house them. So I am going to get you housed where you want because it's client choice. And then we're going to talk about what are your goals, and you're going to tell me what I'm going to help you with. So if we're ready to address rehab or treatment, then that's the route we're going to go. If we want to find a job, then we're going to work on that. But to address those things living on the street is impossible. I am housed, and sometimes that feels like a mountain to climb. I can't even imagine trying to do that. So our first goal is housing, and then we address the other obstacles.
Well said. Sarah.
Okay, question, kind of back to the trust issue. How do you, so you have a lot of relationships when you're in providing services like this. You have relationships with the consumers, and you have relationships with landlords and providers and Social Security and the police and the city. How do you gain, I mean, it's a constant, like the whole day is leveraging resources, leveraging your reputation, leveraging favors you have. You're calling people and asking them for favors, and you're calling in favors. And how do you leverage all of that into building relationships like with the landlords and providers, because they are very important to you as well?
I always try when I'm housing somebody, you know, I don't make that choice for them, but I will kind of nudge in a certain direction, because we do get to know our landlords, and we know what their thoughts and feelings, and you try to match a consumer to a landlord so that you have that best possible outcome.
Long-term, right?
Yes, because we want them to stay. We don't want this to fail. We don't want to set anybody up for failure. They've already experienced that. We want them to have, a positive experience and move forward.
Right.
So I have one landlord that absolutely will not accept anybody who smokes, not even on his property. There better not be a cigarette, but that is his deal breaker.
Yeah.
So, I ask my folks, do you smoke? I can smoke outside. Well, I don't think we need to apply for this one. Let's go over here and look. Because inevitably it's cold, it's rainy, they're gonna light up in that unit, and I can guarantee you he will have me on the phone.
Yeah.
So, we just try to avoid that.
So you mentioned landlords. I don't know if anybody knows this, but Phoenix Community Development Services, Phoenix CDS, isn't always the landlord.
Correct.
No.
So we place folks in the community through our rapid rehousing program. And so that is a rental subsidy and security deposit and kind of the services that you need, and layering on with the lightest approach to start, and then adding additional resources as necessary. And to Sarah's point about leveraging those things, your reputation is everything in this business. And even with our landlords, they know that they can call us. And so if they're having an issue with a tenant, we're going to try to mediate and be in the middle of that and have landlord, tenant, and us there and try to talk through it and come up with plans and strategies of how we can help them maintain that unit while also having the landlord feel good about that person staying there. And so because of that, landlords call us when they have openings. Landlords prefer to work with us. And we have one landlord who probably has 20 of our tenants at this point, and he calls us all the time, and we're always talking to him, and he leans on us for information, well, what would you do in this circumstance? And we don't have to tell him that. We don't have to be those people, but that's what keeps that relationship strong, and that's what keeps his confidence in us and what we do. So always following through with what you say and just continuing to communicate helps to continue those relationships.
That's pretty cool. You do have to be on point, right, with these relationships throughout the community. And I think that's just really, again, a testament to the team. They're fabulous. Do we have any questions online?
We do not right
Any questions in the room? Yes, sir?
Is there any other non-faith-based organization similar to Phoenix Community, or are you the only one in Peoria that deals with this situation through a non-faith, non-church related situation?
That's hard because some folks are church affiliated. I mean, we know Salvation Army and Dream Center have religious affiliations. That doesn't necessarily mean that they serve their clients through the lens of any specific religion. So I can't really speak to that, but that would kind of be my answer, is that we, as far as I know, are the only ones doing the housing that aren't religious or religion affiliated. Yes, thank you.
Good question.
There are other providers that provide services. I think the one thing that's unique about us is that we have the majority of programming in our local continuum of care. So we're the only outreach team, we're the only rapid rehousing team. We're one of the first people in the country to pair those two programs together, which is amazing because we're awesome and innovative. But I think that like Goodwill, they have housing for veterans, and they're not necessarily faith-based. So there are some other organizations out there that do really good work that we liaise with. Joel. These folks are providing housing. They don't own housing, but they certainly are supportive in terms of case management and referrals that we need to make to folks. So
Those are all like smaller subsections, like you say, but
yeah.
Phoenix looks to be like the only umbrella group.
Yes, I thank you for noticing.
It's critical, obviously. And, because other things have their own missions, and something that doesn't align with the people on the street so much, like we've just been saying. And so, we've all been to other towns, and bigger, same size or larger, and there's many groups like Phoenix, but a recent relocator here to Peoria, I'm not aware of those things, so it's fabulous that you guys exist. And thank you for that.
Thank you. Question, yeah.
So with the event being called Help to End Homelessness, do you think if the other like cities in other states had programs like Phoenix that had rapid housing outreach and housing first, do you think ending homeless is actually possible if other cities did what we did?
Tons of cities have what we do, so I can't even pretend that we're the only people in the country doing it. No, that will not do it alone. We need affordable housing. We have a huge housing shortage nationally, not just in our area. Housing is unaffordable. Housing is inadequate. I was just reading earlier, a person who works a minimum wage job would need to work 72 hours, so almost 2 full-time jobs just to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. So if that doesn't speak to affordability alone, I don't know what does.
Can you say that one more time?
I can.
Because that just went whoop.
A person would have to work 72 hours at a minimum wage job just to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. And that's a 1-bedroom apartment at $675 a month. That is not even the extravagant ones that we have that are $900, $1,000, $1,100 a month.
You want federal minimum wage or local?
Well, now you're digging in a little bit. I think federal. I believe it was a federal study, if I recall.
That's what state we're in.
Yes, that's Illinois. Yep.
There was a question back here. Yes.
So you're talking about, housing, you subsidize the rent for the consumer? Is that correct?
Correct. So for our rapid rehousing program, there are many different models. Ours in particular, upfront will typically commit a security deposit and 3 months of rent to help someone stabilize. And from there, we build off of that. So we might tier them down. They might receive more depending on their needs. And then we have our permanent supportive housing, which is fully income based, just like any other subsidized housing where you pay 30% of your income. So we have a couple different things happening.
Fantastic.
Great question.
What
Yeah, Zach.
is considered to be affordable? Like what percentage of someone's income is considered affordable?
30%.
30%.
That's another excellent question.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not just rent. that's
In utilities.
Everything.
Yes.
Everything it costs to have that space.
Correct.
And I will say, I'll come back to one thing, about our organization, coming back to your question about folks doing this, nationwide. And I am a huge proponent of our agency, obviously, and I, hopefully you'll stick around for my presentation at 8:30.
Shameless plug.
But just saying. But what I will say is, there are a lot of agencies around the nation that do what we do, but I would be hard pressed to find one that cares outreach and rapid rehousing, who has permanent supportive housing. We are a licensed mental health clinic in the state. There are not homeless providers who are licensed mental health clinics. It does not happen. It's extremely rare. The knowledge that comes along with being a mental health clinic and folks who have master's degrees in social work and psychology, that is very unique. The last thing, whatever, 5th, 6th, 7th, 9th thing, is that we build apartment buildings. That is hard. That is hard work. Homeless providers do not do it. They don't have the capacity to do it usually because sometimes the financial outlay is huge. I mean, nonprofits don't have a lot of money lying around, right? So when you're pursuing building an apartment, actual apartment building, and having.
Which we've done.
Multiple times. We're about to do next week. It costs now $60,000 to $100,000, and you may not even end up building the building. That's just working out soil samples and all this, all this other stuff. So while there are agencies nationwide who do the kinds of things we do, you'll be hard pressed to find the one that does all of the things we do under our roof.
Under one roof.
Oh, my God.
Mic drop.
Really good.
I have one closing question. Well, it's kind of two. Part A, part B. Why do you do what you do? And what does this work mean to you?
I do what I do because I love it. I love people. I love interacting. I love having answers. I love not having answers and finding the answers. I love everything about it. And it's something that I've wanted to do my whole life. And I never thought this would be where I'd be working with the homeless. And I couldn't be happier.
Darcy?
If you'd asked me this question a few years ago, this is never where I thought I would be sitting, ever. You know, we all have our own stories up here, and I have mine. And you know, I spent a brief time in the shelter, and one of the case managers that I had said, "You're really good at talking to these women. You're like, they trust you. They look up to you." And I thought, are you kidding? I'm sitting in a shelter, you know? And fast forward out a couple of years, my biggest regret was not finishing my bachelor's degree. So I went back to school. Again, not easy. And I knew I wanted to do something along this line. And I came across this job on Indeed, and I thought, well, why not? I'll apply. And they hired me, and I had, you know, I was a little nervous. You know, I'd never had a lot of interactions with homeless people. And after the first week, it was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do.
It was home.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Love it. Love it. Shendante?
I agree with Darcy 100%. It's never what I thought I would be doing or expected me to be doing, but once I got here, it was the best thing for me. I don't know what else I would want to do for sure. I just love it though.
You want to talk about this?
We don't forget your picture.
Okay, so I won't say the man's name, but this is a consumer original. This sits on my desk every day. And I was lucky enough to house him in September. And he had worked with other case managers. In fact, he had started out with another case manager, and she stopped him from heading to the bridge to end his life. And then slowly he started to trust all of us. And he was so grateful when we got him housed. He said, you know, I need to give you something. I need to give something back. Well, we never accept anything. Obviously, the man is a great artist. And he opened up his sketchbook and he said, here, please take one. This is important that you have something. Now, also, there's cultural significance to this because the gentleman is Native American. And to give somebody in that culture, that is the highest respect. So this was the picture that I chose.
Beautiful.
I took it home, I framed it, and it sits on my desk. And when you have those off days, because we all do, this is a very tangible reminder that for one person, this team completely changed his life.
Gave him life.
In a way, yes.
Yes. I'm going to close by revisiting the stats that we read off at the beginning. I think it's pretty obvious that the work that these ladies do is humbling, it's noble, and it's extremely effective. Because of your heart to help others, 80% of the unsheltered people are able to secure housing. Because of your commitment, 97% of those housed maintain their housing and do not return to homelessness. Can we give them a round of applause? They're amazing. Okay, so next up, we're going to take, well, now it's an 8-minute. It was going to be 10, sorry. You get an 8-minute break, and then program will pick up at 8. Something else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
Grab some food now.